with COVID-19, how it's affected sports, I would say that we're in a tough spot globally, right? I think with the way we're going with COVID-19, the right decisions were made to shut down everything to make sure that there are no cross-contamination or people in arenas, people at venues or stuff like that. And I don't know when it's going to come back. I mean, I realized that this thing was really serious when I realized our escape, which is sports, that they were all canceled. To me, sports is an escape. It is what we use to help get us through our daily lives for most of us, right? Whether it be judo, whether it be football, American football, basketball. You know, Justin and I always making the joke about stick licking on the Ocho.
Yeah,
right?
the Ocho.
The Ocho, right. So, I mean, sports helps, they help us to get away from our daily lives, and it gives us something to hope for. You know, we always love triumph over challenges and over insurmountable odds. And we love a true underdog, and we always love somebody to root for, right? And in our daily lives, we don't have that. So unfortunately, with COVID-19 kind of suspended, everything right now is just pretty bleak.
You asked about why the rush to get back, Marsha, but it's more than just, as Neil is suggesting, you know, your escape. I guess because here in Barbados, we don't have sporting industry like the rest of the world does. So when you hear people wanting to reopen sports, mainly as anything else, it is money. Outside of technology, the sporting and entertainment industry worldwide accounts for like $620 billion. In the United States alone, that's like, what, $32 billion. Could you imagine an economy missing $32 billion, you know, just like that? So, you know, you see Florida's reopened and then declared professional sports as essential. I think Georgia as well looking to reopen as well. And it is easy for us to sit down and say, you know, sports in the grand scheme of things are not massive. And for me, they are. And I believe that they should not return right now. But at the end of the day, if something like inside the United States is worth $32 billion or generate $32 billion of economy, then obviously then that has a lot of lives, because we have to look past just coaches. We have to look past just the athletes, general managers and stuff, and understand that these things employ millions and millions of people. I mean, you get past the concession stands, people outside selling tickets, security guards. And you've told me already, Marsha, you've made a point that sports is one of those industries that open up jobs in other industries. So
Every
you have
other
doctors,
industry you could possibly think about.
So you have doctors, medical practitioners, you have media practitioners, you have so many, like food, concessions, you have memorabilia, you have insurance,
architecture.
It is so huge, right? So as I said, it's easy for me to sit down and say, well, you know, from my perspective, because I don't make I don't make a huge living off of sports. But if you're an owner, let's say you're an NBA owner, NFL owner, and you are making $1 million profits, you know, that's huge. Or forget the owners. You are a worker at TD Bank Arena in Boston. Your livelihood is gone. And as much as we know, we don't want to get back out there too quickly, because as we found in Japan and in China, there are cases of reinfection. You don't want to start that. The reality is we also can't live without money, can't live without food, can't live without shelter. And that's what sports provides.
Now, I'm very glad you mentioned Japan. Just today, a virologist in Japan suggested that even the Olympic Games in 2021 isn't a shoo-in. So now the games have been postponed 1 year. And from their standpoint, he's saying, you know what, don't think it's a done deal. This thing could even be postponed again. So here you have the Olympic Games being postponed. But as you mentioned earlier, Miami designating sport as an essential service. In New York, you have public events have now been banned, or the permits have been revoked up until June. But then you have major leagues, the NFL, etc., trying to start as soon as possible. Some even saying, you know, late summer, September, October. Are these timelines really feasible?
No. And I'm not a medical practitioner. I'm not epidemiologist. That word continues to kill me. But I did read an epidemiologist on Sports Illustrated, right? And he said if there's one sport that probably has the best chance to return quickly, and by quickly he means 2021, he said baseball is it, Major League Baseball, because they are looking to return this year and without fans and using a bubble city. By that, I mean everybody in one location, basically in a bubble, like in a dome, playing, I think, in Phoenix, Arizona. And their proposal is to have multiple testing, everybody isolated from everybody else. So not just the players, not just the managers, not just team officials, but drivers, doctors, whatever. And he said, in theory, it sounds like it work, but it's just one issue and everything would have to go well. All it takes is just one person, not just a player or umpire. Just one person just has to test positive. And remember then that takes a 14-day span. That's a 14-day span that everything shuts down. So, and every day that one person, tests positive, not only do you face a shutdown, then you have to go back and retest everyone else that has come in direct or close contact. So at this stage, even if you're playing, as they suggested, 7-inning games as opposed to 9-inning games, and multiple games per day, like 5 and 6, every day that somebody tests, that's a 14-day window that you shut everything down. How long can you go with that? Like, it's just really not feasible. So his argument is that he does not see sports returning and without fans till like late 2021. So the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, all pushing to come back. Says it's not realistic.
Now, Neil, Justin just mentioned, that MLB proposal to have double headers and 7-inning games in a bid to get the season going, so to speak. But I also have a concern in terms of, from the backroom end, you put all these things in place, you have your timelines, but what about the players? Because these players have been inactive for so many months. Some of them, they don't have training facility, the basketballers, some of them don't have hoops, where they live, they might live in an apartment, etc. So even if you set that timeline for sport to resume, let's say in August or September, how much of an impact would this have on the players?
It would have a tremendous impact. People not that they don't understand, but athletes are very dependent on their bodies, right? That is their biggest commodity. So in the case of basketball, for example, you pretty much were in late season form. You were playing very well. You went ahead and did everything that you do to keep your body in shape. I know you've had this long layover. Players like Jason Tatum, who live in an apartment building, as you said, Marsha, they don't have any way that they can go to the basketball court, keep training. Some may have weights. Some may have the discipline to do their at-home training and dieting. But the reality is that many players may be out of shape, especially some of the top athletes in these sports. There was talk about, I think Justin had mentioned, we had a conversation before, he was saying that they may have a preseason kind of thing before, like 28 days before they get back into the swing of things, for the example of the NBA. But I still think that and then there is the athletic part of it. There's the taking the players and trying to get them back into shape for playoff contention, and for NFL and NBA, and then for MLB, that season will not be starting. But then there's the psychological aspect. You're asking players who are kind of worried about what's going on with this situation in the world. They have to obviously be taken from their isolation and their homes to be taken to these arenas. That is a transportation hazard. You have people that will be handling you. There'll be people transporting you. You'll be traveling. So there's the danger of that. And then when you get to wherever you go, there are the hotels, there's the restaurants and that kind of thing, the people that you have to interact with in these cities. And then you're asking these players to isolate themselves in a hotel away from their families. It's one thing to isolate yourself with family members, your children, your spouse, whomever. But no, you're asking them to isolate by themselves, only with their players to kind of keep them going. I mean, yes, it would be like a very extended road trip. And players already don't like road trips because of the psychological toll. So I don't know how feasible it would be. And again, I can let Justin take this, but Justin did mention that if one person tests positive, then you got to shut back down everything again. So you could as well. Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, so sorry, Neil. But we were mentioning earlier in our dry run, a situation where we believe the players have been isolating themselves. I think 2 NFL players already have tested positive, one being Super Bowl MVP of Super Bowl 50, linebacker from the Denver Broncos, Von Miller. So if we are to believe that these guys are isolating themselves, I do believe, and he's already tested positive, having been away from everything else, then can you imagine a contact sport like the NFL, where we have already not come up with a vaccine, or we don't know what the situation with the virus, and you're having contact sports like NFL playing, or even non-contact sports like basketball going on, and like what is the likelihood that you're going to not limit the spread, where, as you know, everything is shorten the curve, but like you're not going to do that with physical sports playing. As the epidemiologist possibly said, the best case scenario is baseball. Like there's no way that without, best argument is the situation in China. For like a couple of weeks, almost a month now, they were trying to reopen the Chinese Basketball Association. And remember, this outbreak, or at least we've been told that this outbreak started in Wuhan, China. Now, if they at this present point continue to push back the Chinese Basketball Association, then I don't see how us in the Western world that are so far behind their timelines can look to reopen anytime soon, because I've sitting and seen a lot of leagues looking at are targeting mid-May to early June. I see golf targeting mid-May and I think baseball as well. And we're just putting people at risk. I've even heard theories of people saying, what is the likelihood of letting people get it as many people get it as possible, see if we recover and get over it. But because we know so little, there's too much chance of escalating deaths.
Now, if you're just joining us, you're watching This Just In, a new sports show, the brainchild of Justin Marville, where we as sports fans get together and talk about some of those burning topical issues that keep our group chats alive and so forth. Now, right now, we're talking about sport and the coronavirus and the impact of COVID-19 on the sporting world as we know it, in the sporting industry. Now, gentlemen, in light of everything that you've said, everyone is looking for, okay, when will things get back to normal? But will there ever be a normal as we know it? Or is the sporting world, the sporting industry changed from this point on?
Well, I think the one thing we have is a positive coming out of this, right? Which is that the way we do business and sports and everything related to school education, all these things are going to change, because now we can do things virtually. We have the WNBA, for example, they had their draft on Friday, and they pretty much had that virtually. Schools are going completely virtual. Look at what we're doing now. This is facilitated. And to be honest, I'll be honest and say, if we didn't have this pandemic, we'll be waiting to get studio time and equipment and all these things when, this is something we can do just based on our smartphones and just a little ingenuity. So the way we do things will change. I think that things like the 2K competition and the horse competition, some of these sports news channels, they're finding ways to kind of fill the void and keep things going instead of showing all games. And I saw there was a cornholing, all these different.
Being bad toss. Let me call it being bad toss.
Yeah, right. So you're seeing all of these sports being shown in replay, and the fact remains is that ESPN, I must commend them, even though Justin has a lot to say about the horse competition, but I think they're very ingenious for the way they're trying to get things done, get the community involved, and keeping your favorite athletes in the spotlight. So, I mean, it is fantastic. We've always had the Madden competition. They've always had the Madden Bowl. So, but now it's extended to different things. I'm actually hoping that more esports will be shown around this time, because
not me. Not me. No.
Esport is the future.
Esport is the future. Well, already met people in esports are making millions of dollars, Justin. I mean, that's where the world has been going. We have Twitch streamers that make quite literally $7 or $8 million a year. We have athletes that prize money and competitions. I know for Call of Duty for sure, there are $1 million competitions. For Street Fighter, for Mortal Kombat, for all of these favorite games that we played growing up, there are $1 million competitions out there. And Fortnite had, I think, the third place winner won something like $14 million or something like that. So, I mean, that is just the future. And the way we are doing sports, there's a market for it. Millions of people own these games and like this. The community is huge, so there's a demand. So, I mean, it will never replace, in terms of sports, it will never, ever take away from the play on the field. But there will be kind of an insight into how things are going. For example, a lot of NBA teams, they now own esports. A lot of professional athletes own esports teams or part-own esports teams. So to me, something like this can only escalate and speed the evolution of esports coming to mainstream.
What do you feel
Justin,
about Marsha?
What about you?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Justin.
No, go ahead.
No, for me, I'm saying I'm very interested in watching, not only the innovation, but some of the discussions surrounding what this new normal for sport will look like. So is it a case where we'll have, virtual broadcasts with only closed doors stadiums, sport without spectators? Will it be a case where you have like a rapid test going into venues, for all spectators? Interestingly, you saw an article from Novak Djokovic today saying he's not in favor of a vaccine. And if it comes down to needing a vaccine to travel for sport, he would have to reconsider, what it is he's going to do with his future. Because we might very well reach a stage where, in order to travel, and this is with or without sport, a vaccine similar to how you now need a yellow fever vaccine to go to certain places, a coronavirus vaccine might be needed. And this might be that new normal for us, and sport wouldn't go untouched. From the broadcasting side of it now, when you see esports, a lot of the horse competitions, etc. For me, as someone who's very interested in the business of sport and sport marketing, a lot of that is also about meeting those obligations to your sponsors. You saw, the horse competition was sponsored by State Farm as a presenting sponsor. You would have had these multi-million-dollar deals, which would have been signed, sometimes contracts 3, 4, 5 years, and you still have to meet those contractual obligations. So from a broadcasting perspective now, the onus is on the broadcaster to fill that airtime and do that make good for their respective partners and sponsors and so forth.
I agree. You asked earlier on about what is going to be the new norm, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, so I'm not going to answer, because the reality is I don't know, and none of us really do. I do know that it will not be what we were accustomed to. It will not be what as is. You and I were joking earlier today on the phone, saying that we're going to have a generation of kids or grandkids where we tell them, how, you could actually go outside without passes, and they're going to laugh at you. Like, what do you mean you could have gone outside without passes? Or you could have, you didn't have to get a vaccine before you entered the stadium, or you didn't have to get a vaccine before you get on this plane. The reality is, and we have to face it, things are not going back to what we know of as like any large gatherings, and obviously that's at stadiums, that's inside ballparks. I don't know if there are going to be allowed large gatherings whenever we get back to whatever we get back to. And for certain, I don't know if that will be for sports. Like, Marsha, I don't know. And for anybody to say that they do know, like an NFL commissioner or NBA boss or NBA owner, then they're lying to themselves.
Now, another thing I found interesting today, you saw an article, I don't remember where I saw it, where someone was suggesting even in cricket, bowlers will no longer be able to use saliva to shine the ball on a particular side. So the very nature of, the sport as we know it might in effect change. And speaking of cricket, here in the region, the CPL is very much sticking to their late summer timeline and trying to, hold on to that August, September start time frame. Now, with us being a little bit closer to home, we know the realities here in Barbados. Is a late August, early September CPL possible?
I'm sorry to continue repeating myself, especially for my fans and you that has to hear me every day on the phone. No, it is not possible. Like, I don't know what else. don't get me wrong. As I said, I am not a commissioner. I'm not an owner of a team. I am not somebody who has to work out logistics. So it's easy for me to sit down at home in my room every single day and say these things because my livelihood does not depend on it. My children's livelihood does not depend on it. My family's livelihood does not depend on it. Like, it is easy for me to say this, but we have to start facing facts. Any sport this year, they do mean any sport, because I heard that the Americans are saying, oh, NFL will be on in September. They start at the first week of September. No, that is not going to happen. I am not a medical practitioner, so I don't want to get too far into it. But until we get a vaccine, until we can ensure that when we go outside, people are going to be safe, until we can ensure those things, then there is no way any sport, because sports are typically dependent on fans. And that's for argument's sake, say that the CPL, even if they restrict themselves, so let's, here in Barbados or Antigua, you restrict yourself to Barbados, Antigua for what, August, right, Marsha?
Yes, August, late August into September.
You restrict yourself to one venue, play 4 or 5 matches in one day. As I said, with the possibility with baseball, all it takes is one person, whether it be a player, whether it be a coach, whether it be anybody related or that came into contact or came in the vicinity of, let's say, 10 or 15 people to test positive. Then that's a 14-day window you have to shut things down. And as you just said about broadcast partners, when you have a 14-day window that you have to shut down, what then? How do you recoup the money as an advertiser? How do we look back and tell, let us say, for argument's sake, say, Dove the soap comes and asks, I want a piece of this action. How do I say that you get back your money? What do I feel for those 14 days that has to be shut down? Until we know what the virus is, because there's just too many unknowns with this situation. Yeah, we just really can't get back to the field.
So, Neil, then, if we take all of this into consideration and look at sport, coronavirus, and the impact of coronavirus on the sporting industry as we know it, we're talking about a disease which has had an impact on every corner of the world, essentially. You've had over 2 million cases confirmed. You've had over 100,000 deaths. But here we are having this conversation about sport. And there's really a push, especially in North America, to get sport restarted. Is it a case of sport taking itself too seriously in the grand scheme of things when you're looking at human life and putting human life at stake?
I don't think it's a situation where where sports is taking itself too seriously. I think you have to understand that the economy is, especially the American economy, is heavily dependent on sports, right? I mean, when you think about the money generated by the 4 major sports, we're talking about literally billions of dollars going into the U.S. economy, whether it be from ticket sales, whether it be from TV rights, whether it be from just people selling at the venues, outside the venues, merchandising, all these things, they're taxable, and these things, they bring in income for the federal government. So I think I can't remember these stats offline. I think you had told me, but it accounts for quite a bit of the U.S. economy. So there's an impetus to get that going. But I still think that enough is not known about this virus to let everybody go on travel. I mean, there are psychological effects. There, obviously the physical effects, and we don't want to put people at risk just for money. But I can understand why there would be an impetus to get everybody back on the field, to get games going and playing again, because one, it's going to generate money, and two, it is going to help distract from what is going on. It will help give us an escape. So, I mean, when you think of the thousands of jobs out there, where people are now staying home because arenas are empty and sports, they aren't playing. You have so many people at home. You have so many lives impacted by this virus in sports. We're just talking sports now. I can understand. I know it'd be easy to say, oh, it's just the greedy owners that want to make their money or whatever, but it's tough to say that because the reality is a lot of people are hurting right now because sports aren't playing. And this is not just from fans or people that want to see their teams do well. This is from people that have a dependency financially on sports.
a lesser point to that, in the places like United States and Europe, their culture is so dependent on sports. I mean, you don't have to go any further than to say in the United States that accounts for $32 billion in economy. But when you look in places like United States, you equate their holidays to sports. Memorial Day is baseball. Thanksgiving is two things. You're going to eat turkey and you're going to watch 3 NFL games.
Football,
Christmas
correct.
Day, it's 5 games on ESPN. That is so. Sports are so much a part of their culture, right? And so much a part of their economy. Could you imagine, like, us here at home, our GDP is nowhere even close to their economic impact. Can you imagine taking out? We don't even circulate $32 billion alone in Barbados to go on top and say let's take out $32 billion out of the country.
Now, something that I thought about genuine just now when we're talking about, a lot of the conversation is focused on the pro rank, so to speak. But what about college sport in the US? Because this would have an impact even on some of our Barbadian students. A lot of our athletes have track and field scholarships in the USA. If the universities don't reopen, as many of them have closed, then the college sport framework and that NCAA network, which is essentially the feeder program or the base ground for those pro leagues, that in itself becomes disruptive. How then can college sport navigate this whole period of uncertainty?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is I had the opportunity to speak to two track and field stars coming out of secondary school. Camille Gaskin-Griffith, she is going toward Indiana State University. She was supposed to be going, she got a scholarship, and she was supposed to be going in September, but no, all of that is up in the air because, you haven't had the opportunity to train. For some of these athletes, you have not had the opportunity to showcase your talents. Like when you think about the NCAA tournament for basketball, this was going to be a very, very good measuring stick for these youngsters going into the NBA draft, right? Because it was so wide open in terms of the big players and the big teams. They unfortunately won't have a chance to showcase what they can do on a bigger stage. So now you have kind of the situation where if you do have a draft, and we can talk about this later, but when you do have a draft, you'll be going into stuff blind. You don't know how to assess a player. And yes, you can go back to old footage and stuff like that, but how does a player how does he do when the lights are the brightest? When there are so many cameras on him, where there are literally thousands, tens of thousands of people screaming against him? How is that going to impact him mentally? How is he physically going to hold up? Some players are freshmen, and yes, they may have gone through the season thus far, but how are they going to go with the compact schedule of a playoff season? So it is going to be very challenging to assess players going forward. It's heartbreaking that some of these players are not going to fulfill their dream of playing in their final season, their senior season on the highest level in college ranks. And, it is going to be quite difficult to not only assess talent, but also to evaluate people's physical abilities and injuries and recovery and all that.
I wish you had left this question till a couple of weeks or a week later, Marsha, because we have a special guest to deal with that. But I will say the impact is huge. It goes so far beyond. Like, we don't know, like, certain sports, the NCAA has already granted for people, in certain spring sports, I guess, to return.
Extended that eligibility.
Exactly. So then that then impacts on how the people that are coming in will be coming in as freshmen in either next year. So then that impact in numbers of scholarships. As we know, a lot of Americans use that because they cannot. I mean, collegiate education is a business in the United States. It's not here because we hear it's free, but that is also a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar probably industry in itself. So now you have situations where impoverished kids cannot get out because they use A as free education and B to get to the next level, whether it be the NBA or NFL for pro ranks. That disrupts so much. You don't know what's going to happen. People leaving high school, what do they do now? People, their last year eligibility, what happens? What happens to the guy who was looking to transfer to another program because he couldn't start at quarterback? See, let's take a kid like Joe Burrow, who's going to be #1 overall pick for the Cincinnati Bengals in Thursday's draft. what would he have done if this was a year later when he wanted to leave Ohio State, or sorry, 2 years earlier when he wanted to leave Ohio State and go and join. Oh my gosh, my brain is gone here. Where the Tigers. Oh, you would never think LSU Tigers. My gosh, you never think I watched that every Saturday. Yes, LSU Tigers. Mm-hmm. What would have, like? There's so many unknowns. Like, this is going to impact so many kids. As I said, that pipeline to college and then to the pros is so important for so many kids who could not otherwise afford, education, or do not have any other skills. We just don't know. And yes, as I said, I'm teasing one of our next guests. He will, in fact, deal with that, possible impact going forward.
So now we're talking about the impact of COVID-19 on the sporting industry, not only here in the Caribbean, but around the globe. And both of you have been, alluding to how difficult it is to now assess athletes, especially those from the college ranks looking to move into the pro ranks. Just over the weekend, we had the WNBA draft. It was done virtually because of the situation. Your thoughts on the draft? Should the draft had gone ahead? The WNBA season was slated to start on May 15th. That has been postponed until we don't know when. Should this draft had gone ahead?
Well, I'll start. Right. I think that it's tough to say because you can have the draft. The draft, there's a framework to have the draft. There's nothing wrong with having the draft. And I think for football, yes, you can go ahead with the NFL draft. But for these drafts coming up, let's go with the WNBA draft. So with the WNBA draft, there were some players could go well, like Sabrina Ionescu. Ionescu, right. She was scheduled she was predicted to go first, and she went first. So there's talent there that will reach their potential and things like that. Now, when you're talking about some of the other players where they had question marks, especially in basketball and football, we know about the big ones, but we don't know about the ones that have these intangibles or the injuries or the mindset going forward. So now, if you do these drafts, you're kind of going into it blind, and going forward is going to be kind of rough because you just don't know where you're going to get. You may know the lottery picks. You may know, I more than likely can get these things. But when you get later down in the drafts, you get further and further down in the draft, especially in a sport like the NFL, where you literally have, 7 rounds? It's 7 rounds, right?
Yeah, 7 rounds.
7 rounds. 7 rounds is like over 2 days. So what's going to happen when you're 3 days, sorry. What happens when you have 5, when you're round 5 pick 14? Like, how do you assess that talent?
Yeah.
Exactly. So, because when you get down into those rounds, it comes down to intangibles. Look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady turned out to be the greatest quarterback of all time. So, how do you find that diamond in the rough now that you have had a truncated season and you've not seen these players at the highest level in college? That is going to be a huge challenge.
I want to go even further to say, well, first, let me touch on the WNBA draft. I don't want to leave out my ladies. 3 rounds there, as you know, Sabrina Ionescu went number 1 overall as expected to New York Liberty, and that's great. I guess she's going to shine the bright light, a great big market like New York.
Sign it in a new Nike contract.
Of course.
Under the tutelage of Kobe Bryant.
Rest in peace. Right. I want to say, in their situation, I had no problem with that going, but even in that, they missed the opportunity, obviously, to meet the commissioner, hug and stuff. So, people may see that small, and it probably is. But you had a situation where the second round, a lot of those picks were announced during commercial breaks. And then the third round itself was not even announced. Just a graphic came up, and it went on the screen, and that was that. So a lot of players lost their time to shine. But now, even onto the more important NFL draft, which is coming up again, as I said, Thursday. I don't believe it should happen. Now, I'm not sure, Marsha and Neil, if you are aware that they had a dry run today to make sure, to iron out any kinks or whatever not. As this is going to blow your all-purpose school when they tell you. As early as the first pick, Cincinnati taking the first pick, there are problems. There was an issue, apparently like a 10-minute issue, and somebody was on record as saying it was dreadful. And that was a dry run from the first pick. like as I said, like right now, I think I'm experiencing technical difficulties on my end because of poor internet connection. No, can you imagine?
And there's only 3 of us.
And there's 3 of us. No, you're dealing with 32 teams, and not 32 teams where everybody's in the same building, huh?
Yeah.
You're dealing with 32 teams times probably 3 because you're general
a minimum
manager.
Of 3, yeah.
A minimum of 3. So 32 times 3. And you're not
scattered all across the US or the world, because we don't even know if some people made it back to the US.
Oh, that's another thing.
Justin?
It seems Justin may have. We talk about, the commentator's curse. Justin has literally just jinxed himself. But
right, Justin?
we can hear you somewhat.
Am I here?
Are
y'all still there?
Yes, we are.
Yes, you.
Classic commentator's curse.
I am gone.
He talks about losing the internet connection, and there we go.
We can still hear you. We can still hear you, Justin.
Are y'all there?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we're here.
See, speaking of technical difficulties,
that's just 3 of us.
Yeah, you just did yourself. You just did yourself.
I know I should have put that comment at the bottom of the page. Mark that there. I was just saying, I'm not sure if y'all got that, but as I was saying, no draft means as much to any other team sport like the NFL draft. In that one, teams can move from worst to first. Every year you see teams moving from worst to first because of the immediate impact rookies can make, especially running backs and defensive players. They can make immediate impacts and change the fortune of your team like no other professional sport. And then, as you know, no other sport, like you have like at least 12 different position groups in NFL play. So you have a serious case of evaluation. And especially at the top of the draft, where general managers' jobs are dependent on making sure, especially lottery picks and first and second round picks are made, or you hit the nail on the head. And this draft in particular, you have the Alabama quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. Now, if he did not have the injury history that he had in college, he'd probably go like undisputed number 1, or he'd have a battle between Joe Burrow for number 1. But he's had 3 major injuries and 3 major surgeries while at Alabama. And apparently he's had an injury history before at high school. So now you have a situation, you're asking NFL scouts and their doctors who, haven't even, get a chance to see him up front and test him and work him out, to take a risk. So a kid who should have gone number 1, at worst case 5. Now you're seeing it slip and slip and slip. Now you're hearing talk of people, Miami at 5, not drafting him. They want to draft another quarterback, Justin Herbert, out of Oregon. And to me, no, that's a mistake, because when they look at draft grades, he doesn't even have a top 20 draft grade, but they have a need at quarterback. They can't evaluate Tua. So they're going to take you're going to take a flare on the kid who's probably going to be overdrafted, just like most quarterbacks. And then outside of just evaluating injured players, I don't really want to go too deep into this, but we all know the situation with Aaron Hernandez. No, if you don't have a chance to interview this person in person, could you imagine you're winding up with another Aaron Hernandez on your team? And there was a reason why 31 of the 32 teams passed on him, because they had a chance to send, detectives behind. Yes, there were detectives behind him. They had a chance to interview him in person to get a better background of the human being that he is, and not just a footballer, because Aaron Hernandez was a first-round talent. But the 31 and 32 teams passed on him because, well, I don't think we have to go much further into the situation or the reasons that he was passed on. So in a situation like this, you have to push back the draft. And I've been told that all 32 general managers basically told their owners, this is crazy that we cannot have this draft. But again, money's on the line, so they're going ahead.
I think from the owner's perspective, while I'm not necessarily in favor of having the draft, no, I can see why they're pushing for it. Because if you are adamant, the league will open X time, all of this business and needs to be tied up so that once the all clear is given, you can hit the ground running. You don't want to be scrambling last minute trying to get players across the US, etc. So from now, everybody knows where they're going. Teams can plan. Then new contract negotiations can continue. So teams are settled for whenever venues are now accessible and there's that freedom of movement. For me, that's the only reason, because they're so adamant on having football this season, then the draft does indeed have to take place.
You're so adamant. But when you miss on tour, or you get it wrong with somebody like Tua, or you miss somebody, a first-round talent named third round, then what happens? The same general manager that told you this draft should not happen, you're going to turn around and fire him. Like, a general manager's job is on the line here. Scouts' jobs are on the line. Like, that's reality. Like, you make or break your team with the NFL draft, and there's no getting around that. And now, because you're so adamant to getting back on the field, people will lose their jobs in 2 or 3 years' time.
Right. No, we're talking about sports, and that NFL draft is sure to have social media and all of the conversations alight from this Thursday. But last night, social media, especially Twitter, was abuzz with the first 2 episodes of the eagerly anticipated documentary, The Last Dance, featuring Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Now, gentlemen, I know, Neil, you are ready and raring to go. What were your initial thoughts after seeing the first 2 episodes?
Take it like, Neil. Take it like.
Take a deep breath in. Deep breath in.
All right. So I'm going to go from a stand. Well, no, let me go professionally first. So as a filmmaker, I thought it was very well done. The production value was extremely high. There were some people behind the scenes, like the director, Jason Hare, as well as Mike Tomlin and some other executive producers that have produced some high-level documentaries, such as the Iverson doc. They've done other documentaries, particularly, and those people are particularly who taught Jordan into doing it. Jordan knew these, Michael Jordan knew these documentaries that had been done before by these guys. So he definitely was on board once he understood that. It was well produced. The pacing was well. The soundtrack was fantastic. The
soundtrack was
lighting shots. Yeah, it was great. It was great. It, like, from a production standpoint, it was very high level. No. As a fan of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, at first, when I heard about the documentary, I was kind of wary that it was going to be a Michael Jordan documentary. And I kind of didn't want to watch another Michael Jordan documentary because I kind of, I've seen most of them, if not all. You had Airtime, you have Come Fly With Me, Jordan to the Max. We've seen all of these. Right?
Put his Space Jam in that category. I'm joking.
I thought this was a serious. I thought this was a serious sports show. But no, seriously, we've seen all of it before, right? So I was expecting. I was wary that it was going to be another documentary glorifying Michael Jordan. But I was pleasantly surprised about halfway to 2/3 into the first episode when I realized the context with which everything was being done. So we know that the I can hear you, Justin.
No, I was picking up one my cheat sheets off the ground.
Okay.
He has pages and pages of notes on this documentary, you know.
I don't need them. I don't need them, dog. No, I got my head. But seriously, in all seriousness, I like the fact that the central theme did not stray from The Last Dance. Yes, chronologically, it went back in time. It would have gone back to when Michael Jordan was now coming in the league. In the second episode, it even went back further to when he was 10 years old and the relationship with his brothers and his father. I thought it was very insightful because all of this is in service and in context to the chronological anchor of the Last Dance, the 97-98 Bulls. So with that, we have and it taught me a lot too about Michael Jordan. It taught me, well, not a lot. It taught me something new about Michael Jordan in that I always knew he was a very competitive person. And yes, we've heard the story about him and his brothers, right? And especially Larry Jordan, how he was always, better than him and whatever. And they always used to come to blows, fights and stuff like that. But you come to find out that his father saw Larry as a more rounded man, if you want to say that. He was more a handy man. He was great at basketball. He was great at sport, baseball, football. He was a handyman. He took pride in things as a man should back in those times in the South. So, and Jordan, his father admitted Jordan didn't know the difference between a pliers and a screwdriver. So he used to ridicule him and tell him go back into the house and stuff like that. Just we can have a
you don't know either.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We can have a quiz for you later. But it was very informative that Jordan was kind of looking for that adulation, that admiration from his father. He wanted to be viewed as, well done, son. So he always took that to heart. If you told him, you can't do that, go for another place, he'd be like, no, I can show you. So then when he started to play basketball and he started to get better at it and stuff like that, he always kept that with him. And it was, to me, psychologically, it gave me an insight into Jordan that was so critical and important to him. The other thing for me was Scottie Pippen, the way they showed Scottie Pippen, understanding why he was undervalued, and the responsibilities he had with his father and his brother being disabled and having to take care of them. So he wanted sure money instead of, renegotiating year after year or every few years, and he may get injured, he may not have that check coming in anymore. As an aging player. So it gave a lot of perspective, and I can let Justin talk about the Jerry Krause and tension of it, because I think a lot of those things going back, especially with Michael Jordan, when he injured himself in the second season, and when he came back, they were talking about this game against the Indiana Pacers on April 3rd, 1986, and he had an opportunity to win the game, but he was on such a heavy minutes restriction, and there were certain things that led up to that, with him being injured but asking to go back to UNC and was playing, unbeknownst to the Chicago Bulls. That trust was kind of shifted once he came back and told them. So they put him on a very heavy minutes restriction. They didn't even want to play him, but Jerry Reinsdorf gave him a compromise of 40 minutes a game. And in that game against Indiana, he was killing it. He scored 28 points. Yeah, he was mauling the Pacers. But then at 31 seconds, they pulled him. And they pulled him because they didn't want him to get injured. And they even told, I can't remember his name, the coach at the time.
Sam.
Yeah. Right. It told the coach that if he plays one more second, you're going to be fired. So he said, Mike, I can't play. Mike is cursing, Mike is carrying on, which is another good thing, that it was so raw and authentic. They were swearing on ESPN.
On ESPN, huh?
On ESPN. So, he was he was so competitive and wanted to get back in the game. They were down 31 seconds. They have a playoff berth. They could get to the playoffs, right? And they said, no, I can't play you. I mean, luckily the Bulls ended up winning, but there was talk in the media about tanking and about them kind of letting games slide and putting Jordan on that minutes restriction. So that kind of tarnished and soured the relationship with management back in 1986. So all of this was in context to why the last season was such a challenge and so storied, and why people were clamoring for it. Because let's be honest, in today's age, when you have the coach is told, if you win 82 games, I don't care, you ain't coming back to coach us.
Not coming back.
You have been literally the second best player in the game at the time being severely undervalued. Wanting, or literally saying, I want a trade at the beginning of their season and being injured. You have a wild card in Dennis Rodman. You have Michael Jordan that ain't playing without Scottie Pippen or Phil Jackson. Like the fact that they got to the championship and won it for the sixth time is incredible to me. And I can't wait for more.
All right, I want to piggyback off of Neil's initial statement about the production value. I was worried that The Last Dance was, when you hype something so much that you can't live up to the expectations. So, like, when I saw, like, last year when they were, kind of previewing it, I thought, okay, well, we're just going to get background information to the 97, 98 season that a lot of us may not know. And, it would just run chronologically. I want to say, my God, that was not what's happening first two episodes. The production value of it is like, the setup is so great. So the first two episodes, as most people probably that watching this podcast would have seen it already, you set up, obviously, each episode has the backdrop of the start of the 97, 98 season. But then you do it from the first episode from Michael Jordan's eyes. And not only do you do it from Michael Jordan's eyes, you take back to the start. And then take him back to the start from his early part of his career. And also with Pippen, you get a sense of, you show the backgrounds to them. So you see, as Neil said, Mike was yearning for his father's love. He basically had daddy issues. And that's what drove his competitive nature. And always wanted to win, always wanted to do whatever it took. So then you got that understanding. Then with Pippen, as Neil alluded to, his father first, suffered a stroke, ended up in a wheelchair. His older brother then also ended up in a wheelchair. So then you got the understanding what he was doing was always with his family in mind. So then each episode, then when it takes you back to that the perspective of the player that you're looking at, then they showed you elements, so without directly saying it, you see why they grew to hate Jerry Krause so much. Uh-huh. And that's why it found so great. So everything is like, it starts in 97, 98 season here, but it goes back. Shows you the players, what led to the players' personality, and why that part of their personality would clash with Jerry Krause's. So that part of production aside, which is really, really great. Let me say, I think, and I'm going to get a lot of heat for this on this podcast, I think Jerry Krause was over-vilified. And I say that
we would disagree.
And I will get
over-vilified.
Yes. Because I can not only sympathize and empathize with Jerry, a lot of things that Jerry would have done, I would have done too. And let me get to it. Let me start from one.
So this is going to be good.
It will be good. First things first, there's no getting away from the fact. Jerry Krause suffers from short man syndrome. Like, his ego.
Short man syndrome.
Classic Napoleon syndrome. Like, he wanted the credit directed at him, and he felt he wasn't getting enough credit. And I'm going to say this. While the quote, players don't win championships, organizations do, is nonsense and folly, I think he really meant to say, and he did say that players alone don't win championships, organizations do. He is right in aspect. He built those two dynasty teams, and he does not get much credit for it. And I'll give you context. We regard Jerry West as one of the best executives to ever live in basketball. We credit him with the Kobe and Shaq Lakers dynasties in the early 2000s. We credit him for the Warriors dynasty, Steph, Clay, Draymond, etc., bringing in Kevin Durant, poaching Andre Iguodala. And now he's getting further credit for the creation of the Los Angeles Clippers. When we talk about the two Bulls dynasty, in any order, we talk about Michael Jordan, we talk about Scottie Pippen, we reference Phil Jackson, and for the latter two titles, we talk about Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr. Nowhere do we ever say the man that brought it all together was just as responsible as those guys. So, no, Jerry Krause did not draft Michael Jordan as Rod Thorne. However, he came in shortly afterwards. He engineered Seattle to draft Scottie Pippen for him for what? Also around players on the pitch.
All them probably sound late.
Yeah, whatever. So he got cents on dollar cents on dollar and got Scottie Pippen, drafted Horace Grant and secured that first dynasty. And as I said, the second dynasty, a lot of people keep forgetting. People act as if when Michael Jordan immediately returned from retirement, the Chicago Bulls won again. That's not the fact. You, Neil, would remember they got tar and feathered when Michael Jordan returned and played the playoffs in that semifinal. They didn't even reach the Eastern Conference Finals. They got tarred and feathered by Shaq and Penny's Orlando Magic in the second round. Beat them 4-2 and beat them 4-2 badly. So what does Jerry Krause do? He sits down and he goes and says, let us get arguably the best defender of all time and most definitely the best rebounder since the big man from Boston, from Bill Russell, and Dennis Rodman. And that's at the time that Dennis Rodman at that time was untouchable. Nobody wanted this man. And yet Jerry Krause had the foresight to see that this will work. So let me go on further. Michael Jordan's initial distrust, I want to say, is misplaced in Jerry Krause. We saw from episode 1, it started because Jerry Krause did not want, and Jerry Reinsdorf to a lesser extent, did not want Mike playing after his sophomore year when he broke his left foot.
Yeah. And
if I was Krause, I'm not reaching a minutes restriction. Jordan's lucky I was not playing him period. And can you imagine this day and age, right? Had Krause decided not to play Jordan at all, there was no way he would be vilified. No, because we all know with the advances of modern science, the risk that Jordan would have put himself in, and there was no reward to playing Jordan whatsoever. No, yes, Jordan was upset or business aspect or again picks, but the reality is, whatever he saw as their benefit or reason, there was no reason to put Mike back on the floor. And yet still they gave him 14 minutes a game. And on top of that, allowed him to play all 3 games in the first round series against Boston. And what did that benefit? What benefit to Chicago? Absolutely nothing.
No. But when will I get a chance to retort?
Hold on. I got too much. I defended Jerry.
No, you go ahead.
Hold on.
You get through your cases.
I'm defending Jerry. Secondly, no. Pippen's initial distrust of Jerry Krause. That comes in the fact of Pippen signing a 7-year, $18 million contract that he quickly outperformed. Remember, Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, told Pippen that he should not sign this because this is not going to work out for you and you are going to outperform this eventually. Now I understand Pippen's reason for doing it because, as I said, the backdrop of the documentary shows that he wants the security of a 7-year deal to deal with his father and his brother in case of injury. No, that's understood. But no one forced your hand in signing that contract. So when you quickly outperform it, whose fault is that? That's at Pippen. No, I understand if they were negotiating in good faith that both Jerrys could have come back to the table and said, well, you are worth so much more. Because at that time, Pippen is undeniably a top 5 player in the NBA. Huh? There's no doubt about that. Some may even say that he was the best after.
He was 122nd ranked overall in the NBA in terms of salary. That's crazy.
Right. But it's crazy.
And he's a top 50 player in the history of the basketball. Remember in 96 he was named to the top 50 team all time.
And how many years later that still holds true. But no one held the gun and forced Pippen to sign that contract. And he was warned by management, you are going to outperform this contract. 7 years is too long. So, and Jerry Reinsdorf has the I want to say that the thing about him where if you sign a contract, I am not redoing it until that contract is up.
Don't come back.
And Scotty knew that signing the contract and yet still opted for 7 years. Third reason, though, and we also know Pippen was upset because Krause was fielding offers publicly for him. But let's remember that this is an aging team. Now, if Krause in his mind believes that this is going to be the end of the run, why not field offers for Pippen for a player who is not going to get any better? And remember, the offers that he was entertaining.
Really, though, isn't that disrespectful to a championship winning team with championship winning players?
Isn't
that disrespectful?
I will say
going for a 6th championship,
a
second 3-peat.
I think Jerry should not have done it publicly. A lot of NBA
and because the thing about it is, not only did he do it publicly, he did it gleefully, you know. And I think that is the problem a lot of people have with it.
Yeah, but again, you're telling this short man, and remember, Jerry Krause is very short, and you're talking about players that are 6'6", 6'7" or above. So they're not only figuratively looking down at this man, they are literally looking down at this man.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you heard the part where Mike walks up to him in practice and asks Jerry, what's the stuff you take to be so short?
So short,
you're literally belittling this man. That is your boss, essentially. You heard Pippen in the back of the bus cursing this man to the point that every single player and coach said to themselves, Scotty has gone too far. Now, me personally, in Jerry's position, I would have fielded offers for Pippen too, just not allowed. A lot of people don't only know now, Bill Belichick was going to trade the greatest quarterback of all time to the San Francisco 49ers to keep and that's the greatest of all time, huh?
But Justin, how do you shop a player like Scottie Pippen quietly to the NBA?
You just don't do it. I mean, as Marsha said, you don't do go there.
Remember them press conferences talking about it. I'm going to trade this man.
And that's
but what I'm saying, I think he understood you could not have done it quietly. So why try to? What you gonna do? You gonna call it?
he didn't
could
want
call it the Toronto Raptors. You could call it the Toronto Raptors and say, don't tell nobody. I look in the shop, Scottie Pippen. I can have T-Mac.
Now I'm going to ask you a question. I'm glad you brought up T-Mac. Were you in Jerry Krause's position, Neil, and you had a chance to get a one of a generational type player, because that's what T-Mac, Tracy McGrady, for those who don't know, that's what he became. If you
But that's what he became.
But hold on, and that's why, to my mind, Jerry Krause is such a good general manager, because he could observe, he can evaluate talent. If
Great
you had the chance
yes,
to swap an aging Scottie Pippen for a young Tracy McGrady, who will then take over from Mike when eventually retires, do you not do it?
No, I will say that I agree with you on this point, in that he was on the last year of his contract, and he's an aging player. He just came off an injury, and there's a little friction in history there. You have an aging team, and you're trying to keep the dynasty together. You already know that Phil Jackson is gone. Not keep the dynasty together, but you're trying to create
because he really wasn't keeping that dynasty together.
Right. So he wanted Phil Jackson to go, right? He wanted to keep Mike, right? And even if Mike walked, he still has to put a team on the floor to be competitive in the East, right?
Exactly.
So I would say that I agree with hearing. I mean, he said it very diplomatically, like he was listening to offers, right?
That's what I'm saying. He was listening to offers.
But as Marsha said, I think he did it. I think spitefully. I mean, yes, he's doing his job. I think he said that Scotty tell me what? You hold on.
Exactly. I can show you who's boss now. That is how Jerry did it.
You see, like he was like, hold on. You know who I am?
Exactly. You see what I can get rid of you. That is how Jerry did that.
I am above and beyond your players,
I want you to also show, as much as we hate Jerry, history shows that Jerry was correct. Because the Scottie Pippen that we know in the Chicago Bulls...
Hold on, Justin. We always know that history has no blind spots. History always looks back on history accurately because it is history. So we can't say that he was right. So what I'm saying,
because you don't know if he had stayed, what would have happened.
But that's his job. He's a general manager. But that's his job. So when he moved Scottie Pippen when Scottie left and went to the Houston Rockets, I don't know who that player was. I can't even recall. I could barely recall Scottie playing for Houston. And then in Portland,
by then. Even psychologically broken.
Oh no!
Potato. Excuses, no.
No. Because if I think we when we talk about athletes, we separate that side of it, and then even this documentary, when you see how much of a player, for example, Michael Jordan was in his mind, you cannot separate the mentals from physical ability and what you bring to the court on any given time. And after that whole episode, Scotty was probably broken. He was over it. Let me just make this money to see out the rest of my playing career and call that a day.
Hoyte and Marsha, I agree with you completely 100%. But that's part of your job. And if you were so broken, like my thing is, when I go to Houston now, if I'm Scotty and I have that bravado, like, oh my gosh, look what you did to me, I'm coming to prove to you that you made a mistake. And well, Scotty was never able to do it in Houston, and he was a bit better. He was a bit better in Portland, but he was never the same player. So to me, don't get me wrong, Rob. I don't know if I would have the heart or the gumption to want to openly move on from Scottie Pippen. But if I have the chance to get a rising superstar, a generational type talent in Tracy McGrady for AJ Scottie Pippen, I'm listening to. And now with Phil, point number 4, how he treated Phil was terrible. Like, you told him, even if you made all 82 games and won championships, boy, you are gone. That's nothing you tell somebody that has won 5 previous championships. That's disrespectful. There's no doubt.
But going back to your point, hold on. But going back to your point, though, he brought in Phil Jackson and promoted him to coach. So essentially, He's probably thinking, I made you all this walking about with your chest up, feeling that you're greater than this and that and next. I made you, so and I will break you.
And in Krause's mind now, remember, all of this is done because Krause sees this as the last year and he wants to get ahead of the curve to break up the team before it's being forced on him to break it up. Why am I paying top dollar for a championship level coach if I'm looking to rebuild? So there's no reason for me to keep Phil Jackson around on a team that I think I'm going to rebuild, probably behind Tracy McGrady. So, regardless of what you do, you're gone. I'm not giving you, because remember, Phil coached that last year on a 1-year deal. I'm not giving you a 5-6-year deal for a team that's
1 year,
built,
6
and
million.
then you complain. Then you're going to complain about the players you have, this and that next season. No, like, I know what I'm not going to have when I'm coming here. I'm going to have Trace McGrady as Michael Jordan's heir apparent. Go ahead, Phil. As I said, it could have been done better, but I understand Jerry. And don't get me wrong. Yes, Jerry, I can see why Jerry was so vilified. I can see how he handled things badly, and it was all an ego trip for him. The problem is I don't think Jerry Krause was given enough credit for the Bulls' success in both, three-peat dynasties.
All right, so now let me circle back. I need to respond. So let me circle back let me start from the back and come forward, right? So I agree with you in the fact that Jerry Krause is an excellent GM. I actually think that some of the moves he made were some of the most brilliant in history. His eye for talent and knowing full well. I mean, he drafted Tony Kukoc second round, number 29 in 1990. Like, he saw something in Tony Kukoc that nobody else saw. So I do agree he was a great GM, and I do agree to a point with bringing in Tracy McGrady because he saw something in him where you get rid of the agent Scottie Pippen, he could be a running mate for Jordan, and then when Jordan retires, he would have taken up the mantle and propelled. I mean, they would have been allowed, but they would have propelled them to probably some playoff berths or success.
You have your superstar to replace, so there's no lull.
Right.
You have the man to take over.
Right. I agree with you on that. That is fine. The way he treated Phil Jackson was despicable. I think that is where the short man syndrome came in. I think that is where he felt like he was bigger than the team and bigger than, the entire team that was on the court. So I agree with you on that. No, the thing with him playing, Michael Jordan playing, right? Let's look at Zion Williamson. I know the counter argument you're gonna come with, right? I know the counter argument you're gonna bring, but Zion Williamson came back in a season where the Pelicans could have easily said, no, we don't need you to come back. Forget about it. They were out to the playoff race. They were like 10th, right? He's an uber athletic player. Yes, he had an opportunity to re-injure himself, but they put him on the floor on a minutes restriction. Why is that, Justin? Why did they do that? But yet still you're making the argument to keep Jordan off the floor.
Because I don't know the extent of Zion. I don't want to look at backpedaling up. I don't know the extent of Zion's injury. I don't know what medical practitioners found, what the team doctors, what the physios saw. But as Jerry Reinsdorf in the documentary said, the doctors told him there is a 10% that you re-injure this foot, your career is over.
Well, just if you get 90% in the test, hold on. If you get 90% in the test, that's an A.
Don't come down, Neil, because they can use.
No, Justin, no.
Let's go on the opposite side. As Jerry said, and I mean Reinsdorf, if there are 10 pills in this bottle and you have a headache, and they tell you 9 of these pills are definitely going to take away this headache, but 1 is going to kill you, are you going to take these pills?
And what did my man say? It depends on how bad the headache was. And that's what I'm going to get to as it relates to players like Jordan. Knowing the type of player you have is very important, like beyond the athletic ability. When you look at across any sport, there are certain generational talents that you cannot treat the same way you would treat any other player. And for me, in most cases, he would be the exception rather than the rule.
And I'm with you, Marsha.
As simple as that.
But we got jobs here. We keep forgetting their jobs. Players will always want to play. You cannot get away from that. And the player's job... Go ahead, Neil.
I am glad you say that people have jobs. Because when you think about the ticket attendance when Michael Jordan plays versus when he is out, it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah, but
when you think of... Hold on.
10 games that Jordan won't play as opposed to the rest of the career, all right. I can sacrifice 10 games to keep him healthy, though.
But hold on a minute. I mean,
say, Justin, that he came back physically weak, Technically, he came back stronger than he was.
He came back stronger.
He came back stronger than he was before the injury.
I think the only reason why they kept him out that 10% is because there was a 10%. I think they evaluated him and say, okay, he's good to go and, he could happen, but just know that there's a 10% chance. And I think that 10% chance did not stem at that time. I think throughout his career, if he had injured that leg again or whatever.
At that point in time. But I'm saying to you now, Neil, right? Everybody has a job. And we need to understand a player's job is to play and nothing more. We keep forgetting, and I point to the Kevin Durant situation last season. You have to protect these players from themselves. Kevin Durant, and I told you this even before the injury, so it's not me looking back at hindsight and say, oh, look, me, I was right. You know my stance on it before he returned to court. I said, this is tomfoolery. Kevin Durant is not to play. You have to protect players from themselves.
But you can equate the two, because Durant was clearly still injured.
Oh, but everybody was comfortable. But at that time...
But no.
We have history to work with us. Remember, everybody at that time was so happy Kevin Durant coming back. And I said,
but he was still clearly injured, as opposed to Michael Jordan, who actually came back stronger than he left. That's not a fair comparison.
That's not a fair comparison because, as Marsha said, Kevin Durant was injured. He was nowhere near 100%. He was nowhere near 70%. He
should not have played, right?
He should not have played, but the percentage of him being re-injured was far greater for him than Michael Jordan. And at that time, they were playing for a championship. So Kevin Durant and the whole organization decided to flip a coin and take that risk. And that was a flip of the coin. When you're talking about 90% chance of never having this reoccurring again, 90% chance, right? That's not a flip of a coin.
I get you, Neil, but hold on.
That is no probability.
Would we agree, as I said, I want to get back to the initial point. Would we agree that a doctor, trainers, and physios have a job to do, right?
Yes.
They do.
Definitely.
And if my doctors, physios, and trainers tell me, do not play this man because there is a chance he may never play again, am I not to listen to the man that is employed? If I have told this man, your job is to protect my players, and he comes and tells me this is how you protect the players, do you not listen to that guy?
You do listen.
I'm sorry, I have to believe in their
hold on a minute. You said everyone has a job. What is a player's job?
To play, and nothing more.
To play. Exactly. So,
if the playing is the issue, you think if they were going for an NBA championship, that 10% would have held sway?
Of course not.
No, just that man.
Of course not.
Yeah, just that man.
According to you, the doctor said there's a 10% chance that he might hurt himself, so you shouldn't play.
Well, they told you, and if you were in conversations with me last season, you would know how pissed I was for the Warriors allowing Kevin Durant to step on the court. I thought that was absolute madness. Like, you know the chance you have to... Players are always going to want to play. You have to save them from themselves.
But hold on a minute. Hold on. I have to make this point. There is probability and there is straight up gambling. Right? Mm-hmm. There's straight up rolling dice and hoping to see what the outcome happens. Right? That is why there is low risk investment and high risk investment. Right? Michael Jordan at that time had a 10% chance of never playing basketball again. Get re-injured, he can never play basketball again. Right? The type of injury he sustained was a fluke accident. That was not something that he doesn't land flat-footed all the time. That was something that just was a fluke happening. So the chances of that happening are really slim. So there's a 10% chance of that happening. Right, good. I see no problem in playing him with minutes restrictions in that scenario. When Kevin Durant is a hair better than 50-50, and we are talking about injuries such as it was a torn Achilles, right?
Remember, we were told initially before he re-injured himself, it wasn't Achilles, which I obviously...
All right, that's what we were told. Hold on. That's what they told. That's what they told. But when we see Kevin Durant there walking about, how he was walking about and grabbing and holding...
Not walking, hobbling.
Yeah.
Yes.
You were going to be blind and not really up to thing to know that that's folly.
Yeah,
but But Kevin Durant in that situation, that was madness. He should not have played because the odds, it was like 65-55. Sorry, 45.
But hold on, Neil. But remember we were told before he returned and he was re-injured, the chances of him re-injuring that particular calf muscle leading into Achilles was going to be very, 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 very low. And that's what they cared to pay. Remember, I don't know. We weren't given percentages, but we were told it was low.
One, and two, that's his calf. But his Achilles was torn.
His calf. Yeah.
So that could not have been an inaccurate
all right, but let's
report.
We're going too far. Forget Kevin Durant then. I always like to look at risk versus reward. If we want to go down that road, right? The risk, as we all know, was Michael Jordan possibly. As you say, it's only 10%, but the risk is him. The risk is him never playing basketball ever again if that 10% comes true. What is the reward? What was the reward?
He makes the playoffs as an 8 seed.
You're not going to win. You're not
going
to win it. Oh, sorry. All right, go ahead. Answer. My bad.
Right. He wins. They get a playoff berth. They get the 8 seed. They play the Celtics. He shows out. Has 49 points in one game. Has 63 in another. Granted, they get beat, but that shows that not only is he a physical specimen, but it also shows that he is above and beyond anything we've ever seen in terms of basketball. So,
sorry to mention, my friend, do not dipsy doodle kneel. What is the reward? You haven't answered. What? You haven't told me what was the reward of
so
bringing
essentially
back
you're saying
Michael
that
Jordan.
These men wanted to tank. And because they wanted to tank to get this higher draft pick, let me just bench everybody and call it a day.
No, Marsha, that's being too straightforward. Yes.
Basically, that's what it is.
That's not what they said. You can say they wanted to protect your investment.
That is what it is.
No, Marsha. You can say yes. You can argue you want to tank and get a high draft pick, which, by the way, turned into Scottie Pippen by the offer. Just want to let you know that. But the argument is, I am protecting my investment, and I have no problem with that. If a man tells me,
they were protecting his investment by playing him on restrictive minutes.
You go to court, anything can happen, Neil. It don't take what, as we say in Barbados, what don't happen in a year is happening in a day. So all it took, all would have happened was, you think in 14 minutes something can happen in 40 minutes of play, and then remember
the type of injury it was and how it happened. I think that was the probability of him re-injuring his foot in that same manner was very, very, very low. The Kevin Durant situation
against Boston playoff series, was there a minutes restriction there? And the answer is no.
No, because the man showed that he was healthy. Clearly, the man played at such a high level, he was able to stay in a double overtime.
I want you to know, right? When I make money off of this podcast and I get my own NBA team, I am not considering you as my general manager. I will not do it because you are not putting my star player at risk.
Come on, no. I would. But you see, sorry, Marsha, but I just have to say this one last thing. I do agree that Jerry's Reindor, as Reindor said, Jerry Krause's role was not to win no personality contest. He was there to do a job, and he did it. Right? I think the reason why he is so vilified is the way he did it, as you said. Right? We can quibble here about the right way he should have done it and the wrong way he should have done it, but he did it the way he did. Right? And was he a bad guy? Was he? I think he was just I would hire Jerry Krause. So
I would, because you know what? Whether or not we want to say all the credit goes to Mike, to Scotty, to Phil Jackson, and later on Dennis and Tony Kukoc, I live in a results-oriented world. And results tell me that as general manager of the Chicago Bulls, with Jerry Krause has 6 championships to his name. And that's bottom.
You just had to work in that court, right? And a results-oriented world. Go ahead, Martha. Sorry.
Just to add a different take on the injury and the consequent making it into the playoffs, etc. What if we look at it from the example of by having those 14-minute per game restrictions and the Bulls actually being able to make the playoffs, Jordan's performance in that 1986 playoffs against the Celtics helps or set up the platform for his legacy. Because had he not performed that way against the Celtics in those playoffs, where you had even Larry Bird saying, that was God dressed as Michael Jordan.
It was. I see you're trying to be Neil's friend, but it's okay. It's okay.
No, I'm just saying, because you have to admit,
like
those
Jerry Krause, I'm not here to win.
Those performances against the Celtics have really, done a lot for Jordan's legacy in terms of, especially how other players viewed him, where if he could single-handedly do this against the Celtics, this is a serious man.
I appreciate you, Marsha, but the truth of the matter is his legacy. I think that even if he had sat out that year and he didn't play in that playoff, he would have been like, his greatness was not gonna. His legacy was always gonna be what it was. Once he was healthy, he was always gonna play.
So wait, hold on. So you're admitting then you have no admitted inconsequentially that the risk was not worth the reward. That's what or the reward was not worth
to the playoffs.
That's what you're basically telling.
Hold on.
I won't go back though. You continue. Go ahead.
No. I'm saying their reward was getting to the playoffs. Michael Jordan he believed that he can make it to Eastern Conference Finals, and he believed he could beat the Celtics, right? So the reward, it didn't go very well for him. No. But I am saying the fact is that I would have let him play it. I would have kept him on the minutes restriction, and I would have tried my best to get as far as I can in the playoffs. To me, him out there not playing and tanking, to me, was not what were you going to get? You want to get Scottie Pippen?
That's not true, because remember, Seattle took him number 5 for Bulls. Like, they didn't remember they missed out on a high draft pick because of Michael Jordan going out there and playing. So they needed Seattle to draft him at 5 for them.
No, that's 86. That's 86. We're talking about playoffs. 87 is when Pippen was drafted. So that was a year apart.
Sure.
So
that's possibility.
Right. So it would have. They would have gotten a high draft pick. They would have picked somebody in 86. Now, who's to say they would have had the same success? We're going on hypotheticals now. Mm-hmm. I think
there's no way to know. Yeah.
Right. In that situation, they did well. I think that I agree with you. He's being vilified. I think he was a damn good GM. And I can't wait to see more of this documentary.
Can't wait.
Well, on that note, as we draw to a close here, the documentary continues this Sunday on ESPN with episodes 3 and 4. And then by the Monday after the next day, it's available on Netflix, is it? So people like me who miss the live showing, there's a chance for you to catch up, or if you enjoy it so much, you can go back and watch episode 1 and 2. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, as we wrap up tonight?
Well, I will go first. I would like to say that keep your head up in these times, in this coronavirus pandemic. Take care of your mentals, take care of your body, take care of your spirit, and sports can come back, man. It ain't gonna be forever. And yeah, I think that Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause did a very good job in ensuring Michael Jordan play those minutes restrictions.
For me, as Neil said, just take care of yourself, take care of your family. Remember those that are most at risk. Continue to observe social distancing. Don't go there if you don't have to. Just do what's right. So we can eventually get back, not just to sports, but to the world as we hopefully as we knew it. That's what I want to say. Well, go ahead, Marsha. Sorry.
No, we're just going to encourage everyone to stay safe, follow the restrictions in their respective territories wherever you may be watching this broadcast, and be sure to join us next week. Justin,
I have a special guest for y'all. The other 2 panel members don't even know, but we were discussing the state of collegiate sports because of the pandemic going on. And I have a special guest who will probably be able to give us more insight into that. ESPN color analyst. I won't go any further. So I encourage you all to return Monday. And obviously, that'll be the day after episodes 3 and 4. Episode 3 dealing with Rodman. And I'm not sure what episode 4 is dealing with. And we also have the NFL. Probably. Yeah. Also, this Thursday is the NFL draft. So Monday, I'm going to put on my Green Bay Packers jersey and discuss how the Green Bay Packers nail this draft. So all we can think, and going forward from next week, you can look forward to an additional episode on Thursdays where we answer your questions and comments. So please feel free in this section on my personal page, on the show's personal page, Instagram or Facebook. You can just leave your comments and queries. What's it again? Instagram is at thisjustin. Thisjustin also on Facebook. So leave your comments and queries, and we will get back to you next week, Thursday. We don't want to have a mailbag show for this Thursday because that's during the NFL draft. And we're not even going to try to compete with the draft on ESPN and the NFL Network. So until then, people stay safe and come back to us on Mondays.
Peace. Bye. All right. Take care, everybody.